All right, everyone, welcome to the live stream for learning backend development. I hope the audio is clear, streaming is fine. If there's any problem, just let the chat. I'll be just keeping my eye there, uh, not really answering your questions, but just seeing if there's any problem. Just let me know in the chat. So let's just start now. All right, so here we are with learning backend development, yet another session. And in this one, I basically want to go over through some of the important things I believe you should know as a backend developer. Does not really matter if you're starting off as a developer right now, or maybe you are some sort of intermediate developer and want to expand your skills. So volume is too low. I think the volume should be fine. Just let me know if the volume is too low, because I can see at my end the volume appears fine. But anyway, just let me know. Okay. All right, I think the volume should be fine. If it's not, just hold on a minute. I'll be back with some new settings. All right, so I think I just have increased the volume a little. If there's still a problem, please let me know in the chat. Again, so let's start with the backend development thing. And now what I want to go over through in this video is basically, just like I said, how you can approach backend, what goes into being a backend developer, all those technologies, and how to actually start. What is the correct roadmap to take? So what you have to do, first of all, let me just introduce myself. I kind of sell myself as a full stack developer because I can work with front end, back ends, and that is essentially what you need to call yourself as a full stack developer. Trust me, there's not a lot of things to do to become a full stack developer apart from learning a bunch of technologies and tech stacks. So here we are. I mostly work with DigitalOcean and AWS, preferably on DigitalOcean for my personal projects because of the simplicity of the admin panel and everything. AWS can kind of get a little bit tricky, but for the most part, yeah, I mean, DigitalOcean is just fine. I'm a big time Node.js user. I know a lot of people try to use Python as well, and other frameworks, other languages. But yeah, this video would be neutral to backend development. This would not have a lot of focus on just node technologies, so you do not have to worry about that. But that's about me. Some other technologies I work with regularly: Nginx and Cloudflare, Docker, stuff like that. And personally, I am currently exploring serverless technologies at the moment. So this is again me, the only decent photo I have of mine. So yeah, so let's start with what backend development really is, right? So, well, speaking of backend development, what it means is that you're just programming a computer to talk over a network, right? That is at least what I like to think about. You have a computer, you programmed it into some way that it can actually talk to other computers over the network. Now that other computer could be just a client on the other end of the planet. It could be a mobile device, it could be anything, right? So you just have to program computers to talk over network, and you can call yourself as a backend developer if you can do that. Most commonly used is HTTP. That is the protocol. That is, you make backends for websites, right? So you have a website online where people can go www.google.com, and a computer on the internet serves that page to you over HTTP. So backend is kind of like commonly used with HTTP, but it is not really restricted to just HTTP, right? There are other protocols as well. You can program for other protocols as well. For example, WebSockets. If you're writing a backend for WebSocket, that is in fact a backend, right? Although it is not HTTP. And yeah, I mean, because you need to communicate, you need to open a window on your server for the other people to actually connect to you, right? For the other computers to connect to you. And how that happens is that through the use of sockets on systems. That is how networking, and that is how computers connect with each other. And of course, it should be configured under a protocol, right? HTTP is one protocol. You have applications like, you do video calls, you do voice over internet protocol. You connect to, there are softwares like TeamViewer, which allow you to share your screen. So there are remote desktop protocols, stuff like that. You have email clients. So all those also follow a particular protocol, and they can be categorized as a backend service as well, but they do not work with HTTP, right? So that's what I said. It's commonly used with HTTP, but it's not very, strictly required. So how should you approach, how does the backend development actually work? Not really how you should approach. So there's just a computer sitting somewhere on Earth, which is connected to internet or intranet, for as a matter of fact, if you're just building a local backend service, and has an IP address, right? Because that is really required to connect with other computers, communicate with other computers. And again, it's just configured under the protocol. And why should you do backend development? Why not just go ahead and make front-end development code just connect directly to your backend services? Number one thing is you can process sensitive data on backend. Now the reason for that is because sensitive data is not really typically handled on the front end sites, right? Because you can just go ahead, and you cannot just go ahead and send all the data to a user, even about themselves, and let the client side handle that, because there are a lot of security violations that could happen, a lot of things that could go wrong. So backend is an environment which is controlled by a developer, which is controlled by a company, startup, whatever entity, and they can process a lot of sensitive data over there. And the second reason is that it's more faster, it's powerful, because if you're owning a backend company, if you're owning a data center or anything, like if you're working with AWS, stuff like that, you can have so much power at your disposal, right? Which you're not gonna get on personal computers. So which are client-side computers, right? So yeah, this is the deal. The number one reason is sensitive data. You can process any sort of data because you control the backend. And number two is backend computers are obviously faster and powerful than your handheld devices or the clients through which people can connect, right? So how to learn backend development, how to really learn backend development, how to get into that. For that, first of all, just make sure that you're determined to be a backend developer, right? Number one, that is like very important. If you're determined, you can follow up any roadmap or anything, and it would be, just easy for you from that point onwards. So I have broken down backend development into some sort of knowledge topics, right? So these knowledge topics would probably include a lot of things, maybe even more than backend development, which the definition really includes. But yeah, I mean, if you even go out of your boundaries a little bit, that is okay. That is just fine, right? Because at the end of the day, if you have a little bit more knowledge than your domain expertise, you're going to be a good developer anyway. First thing is you need to have some sort of network-based knowledge, right? And I'm going to get to each of these points in this whole presentation, so you don't have to worry about that. But the first thing is you have to get network knowledge with you. Second is programming knowledge, right? Third is database knowledge, linking, Linux, cloud, DevOps. and advanced. So we're going to get into all of them. The last three are actually colored because I want to address them differently, because technically I won't really put them into backend development itself, but still these are some of the things, if you know, you're going to be a great developer yourself, right? So network knowledge, starting with network knowledge, what it is, how it works. So what to learn in network knowledge? Number one thing is figure out about DNS and stuff. And by the way, the 8 knowledge things which I wrote down, it's not really a fixed order you have to follow in learning that. A lot of times this is going to overlap with each other. You're gonna mix things up. For some part you're gonna learn network later on. You can learn some things earlier, but for the most part, just make sure you have an understanding that yes, these topics exist, right? So these topics actually exist for you to actually just take a look, so that you don't really miss out on any other things. HTTP, how browsers talk using HTTP, this is also important, right? You have to understand how the HTTP protocol works, what are the request headers, response headers, status codes, how the REST architecture works. Like, these are some practices which are very well established and have a lot of resources as well, so as to speak, and are very well understood by the modern internet infrastructure as well. DNS, HTTP, these are two most important things, I would say. Again, HTTPS is just HTTP, but has a TLS SSL layer over it, so it's secure. So you should know about, why it is preferred, stuff like that. SSH, very important tool to actually, very important protocol to actually connect with remote machines. A lot of exciting stuff happens with SSH as well if you actually master it. Port forwarding, running applications on remote server, and just behaving as if it's running on your own end, stuff like this. It's a super great tool. Now, these were like what you should learn, but the exact topics I think you should be getting into is, now you can basically go ahead and pick up these whole titles and just Google them, right? So you can just pick them up, Google them up, right? And you're gonna find tons of things. DNS working is like one thing I want people to understand, especially people who are intermediate backend developers, and want to enhance their understanding. Now, honestly, you're not really going to get a lot of DNS understanding anyway. DNS working in day-to-day work, but if you have an understanding for that how it works, how it operates, stuff like that, then you're gonna have a good time working with reverse proxies like Cloudflare, for example. If you're seeing that you have updated your CNAME or A record in the DNS and it's not updating, and you know that how DNS works, there's DNS cache invalidation, stuff like that. If you know about that, you're gonna have a good time, right? About the next topic, that is HTTP specifications. Just learn about how this HTTP protocol actually works. And trust me, it's very simple initially to just get an idea about how the HTTP specification works. And you won't believe that a lot of people who work with front ends and even back ends, for the most part, don't really understand how HTTP really works. It's a plain text protocol, it's a simple protocol, but yeah, I mean, understand the header, what is the first byte that is transferred, the methods, get, post, put, patch, stuff like that. You should know about, at least not really remember or anything, because you can always look up on Google and stuff, but just go ahead and just know about these things. So the next thing is HTTP 1.1, which is again a advancement to HTTP standard. HTTP 2 is also there, HTTP 3 is also there. So just know about these things. And I believe a lot of places, a lot of articles, a lot of companies actually write a great set of articles. Like Cloudflare is one of them, which writes a lot of great articles on similar topics. Name servers, CNAME, single 8, 4A records, IPv4, IPv6, stuff like that. You should know about this. Again, I would say not really required as a backend developer strictly, but again, when you're setting up your servers, which is required for backend development, you're gonna be needing these stuffs anyway, right? So you're gonna have to go to your domain registrar, control panel, set these up. So it's better if you have an idea of what you're doing. It's better if you're not, just operating inside a black box and stuff. So yeah, I mean they're like some important things. IPv4, IPv6 is also, I would say, not really get a lot into depth of this. Like, you don't really have to memorize the classes and everything, that what are the classes for IPs and everything, but just know about the basics, that there are 4 numbers, at least 4 octets or whatever they are called, separated by a dot, and how IPs are resolved, how the DNS works again, which is uh, what essentially is the goal, right? So you have to understand about that. I'll be taking questions at the last, because some people are asking questions in the chat. So yeah, I mean, we will have a dedicated questions at the last, so don't worry about that. And of course, we are on removing nonsense people at Ashok. Don't worry about that. Anyway, coming back to the presentation, common service ports, just know about these ports which are available. For example, HTTP runs on port 80, HTTPS runs on port 443, MongoDB, MySQL, stuff like that. So, just have that understanding of things when you're seeing that a particular service is using port number 443 or port number 21 or whatever 22, then you get that click that yes, it is using SSH. Yes, this service is for HTTP. So how would you get that? Now these are the topics, but how you're going to get those services. How to learn network knowledge. The best way I would say is to set up your own servers from scratch. When just it's okay, it's fine, just working on video courses and exercises and stuff like that, it's fine, but you're gonna get real knowledge when you actually set up your own servers, when you're actually in the field playing with the technology, right? And it's easy to set up servers these days. I mean, you're gonna find a link in the description which gives you a free $100 DigitalOcean credit. There are free credits for services like Google Cloud as well. AWS also provides a 1-year free trial. So there are solutions like that available right now. So setting up your servers is one of the best way to learn about these networks and stuff. How to configure the correct records. Just like I said, you have to go to the domain registrars panel, look up on what is a record, what is CNAME, stuff like that. This will actually teach you a lot of things. If you don't want to spend money on domains, you can use free domains which are offered by sites like .tk. So this is like, this is some sort of provider which I used a lot in my initial days. So yeah, I mean, it's just that if you don't have a lot of money to spend initially, and if you just want to learn and stuff, so you can just go ahead and practice on free domains. One resource I would recommend a lot for people of any kind, if whether you're beginning or get advanced, Cloudflare actually has a very high quality blog, and I don't think a lot of people know about this. They write lots of good articles on HTTP, HTTP2, HTTP3, quick protocols. I mean, like the state of the art technology, right? So make sure you follow that blog. There are a lot of other blogs as well. There are a lot of people who do blogging on networks and stuff, but yeah, I mean, I follow Cloudflare very religiously on the blog at least. So yeah. Again, sources for the content, that is the theory part. You can learn from YouTube. There are a lot of things on YouTube. There are a lot of sources, playlists. You can go ahead, search them out and start learning. There's another thing, Codedamn Backend Learning Path. It's still under development. It's coming very soon. I think it should probably be up before this month ends. But yes, Codedamn Backend Learning Path would include that part of network knowledge which you need in order to begin to actually get into backend development, or actually just fill those gaps of backend development. Programming knowledge, that is I think the number 2 thing, because we just discussed the network knowledge. Programming knowledge is also very, very important, right? Because at the end of the day, when you're setting up servers and everything, you need to program the servers to respond as well. So this is this is the time where um, your best programming language would come in, right? So I have just listed 4 now. This is in no way an exhaustive list of backend development programming languages. Feel free to pick up any language you like, right? So you can even write servers in C, C++. Go do that if that is, that is what powers you. But these are like some popular solutions out there, especially Node.js, because Node.js is like the most, I don't really want to say the most widely used, but yeah, I mean, it's the most popular one, at least. Then there's Rust. Rust is, I mean, if I was not a Node.js developer, I would definitely be learning Rust. That is all I can say, because Rust is pretty promising. It has, near native speeds like C, with a lot of memory management and toolkits and stuff, which actually creates a great development experience. C# is also a solution I have not really used much, but I know it exists. And Python, obviously, Python is also very popular. I won't say a very lot popular in the backend space. It's more data science and stuff, but yeah, I mean, frameworks like Django and Flask exist in the backend too. But for the most part, you won't be really writing performance intensive backends in Python, or as a matter of fact in Node as well. But yeah, I mean, it's a great choice anyway. So just pick any one and start with that. Now, usually I say to people that, in the front end part at least, that you should try everything and see what works with you the best. What about Java Spring? Java Spring is also a good option. Java is also a good option. Just like I said, it's not an exhaustive list. It's just the first 4 which came to my mind. But yeah, it's not an exhaustive list, just like I said. So feel free to pick up any language. But yeah, I mean, PHP is also a good language. Not an exhaustive list. Pick anyone, any backend language. None of the languages like PHP or Java, whatever people say they are dying, they are not dying. PHP 8 introduced just-in-time compilation. PHP 7 or 8, I don't really remember, and they have been improving stuff. PHP powers WordPress. WordPress powers 30%, 35% of the internet, and it is not feasible to take down PHP, just like it was not feasible to take down JavaScript when it was very slow and not very performant. People actually improved JavaScript for the web, right? Similarly, people are working on improving PHP. So PHP is going to stay here, right? So yeah, pick any one and start learning it. I that's what I was saying, that I usually recommend people to try out a lot of things at once and just see what works with them. But for this part, what I want is you to just pick up a technology you are a little bit familiar with. A lot of people actually try Python. They enter the world of programming using Python, and if you are trying out Python, just pick up Flask, for example. If you are a front-end developer, pick up Node, right? So just go ahead and pick one. And if you're super blank about any technology at all, just do some research, do some comparisons, or go to Google and write Node.js versus Python, Node.js versus Rust for backend, and you're gonna get some pro cons list, right? So Node has a lot of pros in the ecosystem, and all those packages and stuff, all that support. Node has cons in a single threaded environment. It's not really good for CPU bound tasks, stuff like that. So you can get a big picture of what's happening. Again, the topics for whatever programming languages you pick, whatever things you pick, this is going to be same, right? So this is going to be available. This is going to happen for any programming language you pick. Learn about popular frameworks for that. This is very important, because you never want to write production ready HTTP servers yourself in the raw APIs provided by you, right? For example, I'll be just taking up examples from Node, because that is what I really do, and I don't want to speak for a lot of other languages. But for example, for Node, you're going to see that you get the maximum performance when you use the HTTP, that is the HTTP module from Node.js. But that does not really mean that you should do that in production as well, unless you know what you're doing. Why? Because you can create a lot of security implications. In a lot of cases, you can even create performance implications. And number three is that you as a developer won't be really able to write a lot of good code individually compared to someone who has been contributing to some sort of open source project on uh, on a server like Express or Restify, or just similar solutions that are available. So this is like important thing for, again, for Python and stuff. You have frameworks like Django and Flask. That's the two I know at least. So learn about these things, learn about they exist, what are your options, know your options, right? That is like important thing. First of all, just like I'm just about to contradict my first point, that is, learn about writing HTTP servers in your main language without any frameworks and stuff. Now, why is that? Because that would actually give you the under the hood picture of how your programming language works, how sockets work, how they handle back pressure, not really back pressure, but um, yeah, I mean, if you're, for example, if you're opting in for languages like C, C++, you're gonna see that how you can open sockets inside a network, inside your computer. What does it mean to bind to an IP address? So you're gonna get that knowledge, you're gonna get that information when you write raw HTTP server. If you use some Express or some Express like framework, what you just have to do is just say const app is required Express, and then app.listen 1337, and you're done, and your server is live on 1. But in all honesty, a lot of code actually goes behind just these two lines, right? So you have to be careful about that stuff. Again, learn about what your programming language, whatever you have chosen, Node, Python, Java, PHP, anything, does not really matter. Learn about its internals, right? So concurrency, the language is concurrent, or supports threads or whatever, multi-threaded. How should you do debugging, whether it's in development, in production? For example, for Node.js, you have Node debugger, which you can attach with Chrome DevTools, or you can just download a full-fledged debugger for it as well. How should you profile your server code, like if you're leaking memory, or if you're I don't know, if you're using some sort of garbage collected language like JavaScript or Python. If you're not exceeding that particular memory which is allocated to your system, so stuff like that. You should know about the internals of the language as well. Now, this is not basic. I won't say you should go ahead and do this from the very start, but this is something to keep in mind when you are learning some programming language, because you just don't want to learn about the layer of the thing. You also want to dig a little bit deep into how the thing actually works, right? How the stuff works, what goes into powering a programming, right? Because at the end of the day, these languages are nothing but an abstraction over assembly, which is just machine code, right? So you want to understand what the language has to offer and how you can make use of that. And finally, there's no best language, right? I see so many people fighting over Node.js and Python, Java and C Sharp, and stuff like that. There's no best language. Node.js is not a good language for CPU bound tasks, but it is unbeatable in IO bound tasks, right? And similarly, you can have great code written in C, and just the opposite, the worst code written in C as well, which is defeated every time by Node and V8. So there's not really a best language. Just make sure the language you choose brings the most of your productivity, because for the most part, if you're hitting that scale where you need a lot of optimization, where you need to just extract out every single bit of performance from your server, if you are at that level, if you're at that stage, you probably could hire people to do that. You don't really necessarily have to be that person, because I'm just talking about that scale, if you're achieving that scale. So anyway, there's no best language, so as to speak. Just figure out what works for you as an individual, what works for you, and learn it thoroughly. Learn it so that you cannot be beaten, right? So you cannot be uh, nobody can actually point out that you probably are missing this fundamental concept in your understanding, stuff like that. And how to learn this? again, self-practicing is the best thing. Just like I say in all my sessions, like learning about things by doing is the best way. So self-practicing, creating simple backends is one way to go. Create stuff, right? So if you want, for example, Node.js, if you want to start learning Node.js, start creating backends, authentication backends, um, I don't know, some sort of chat application, WebSockets on Node.js, stuff like that. If you want to learn C++, similar things. Create projects, multiplayer games, you know, whatever you like, whatever you think you can do, whatever you imagine, just implement that. Read about blogs, a lot of blogs, right? So this is what you should probably Google. Just replace those stars with whatever programming language you are using. For example, if it's Python production best practices. Google this up, read 10 blogs, you're gonna be good enough. You're gonna understand a lot of new things about Python. You know, just how you can increase the efficiency of your code. Node.js production best practices, Java Spring, Java Spring Boot production best practices, Laravel PHP best production practices. So, you know, these are some of the titles which are a lot of people have written content about, a lot of people have written blogs about. So this is like one of the best ways to gain knowledge from somebody else's experience, right? So this is like one of the live sessions I'm doing, so you're gaining things which I know, but a lot of people don't really prefer videos, they don't really prefer podcast or anything, but they do write blogs, right? A lot of good people, they do write blogs. So follow those blogs, read about them, and you're going to learn a lot of new things. YouTube playlist is also one of the options, one of the great options, I would rather say, because that is something I use myself to learn a lot of things, especially with the Node.js front end stuff. So that is one great option. And Code Dump Backend Learning Path, again, this is coming soon. So again, not really live at the moment, but I'm still working on that. Should be out before the month ends. All right, so one last option is Udemy courses as well, because you know, Udemy, I usually don't really recommend going with the paid sources initially, but backend, if you really want to get a complete picture, there are a lot of good courses on platforms like Udemy and similar platforms. Yeah, you can go ahead and. All right, so the next thing is database knowledge, and by database I just mean the traditional data we have, nothing really fancy. Let's just get into that. So obviously, everyone knows about MongoDB and MySQL. There's another one, Firebase, and other options like that, but I won't be getting into that a lot because Firebase is technically not a database, it's a backend, it's a whole backend as a service. But yeah, for the most part, you're gonna get the idea. So what happens here is that a lot of people actually get into that fight again, just like what would have happened in the programming knowledge concept. That what database should you choose? Should it be MongoDB? Should it be MySQL? Some other sort of SQL database? I don't know, some new thing, new shiny technology. The thing is, it does not really matter a lot, especially when you are learning by yourself, when you are starting off, right? Because 90% of the stuff which MySQL would do, MongoDB would also do. The 10% part, that is the SQL versus NoSQL part, that would be different. But that 10% thing is probably going to be you know, responsible for performance, for how the layout of the database is, how the files are stored. You know, in a lot of cases, a little bit of functionalities like transactions. I don't think Mongo has yeah, it has transactions, but you cannot really lock a collection. With compared to MySQL, you can lock tables and stuff. So yeah, I mean, it does not really matter initially if you're learning. Just pick one. My suggestion is to go with MongoDB if you're learning Node.js, because MongoDB uses NoSQL. That is, it stores the documents in JSON format. It kind of JSON, it's actually BSON, BSON, but you can basically take a look at the documents in JSON format as well. So if you're working with Node.js, you're going to be JSON all the time. especially if you're working with web, you're going to be working with JSON all the time. So uh, yeah, I mean, this is my recommendation, but it does not really matter. Node.js has a great support for MySQL as well. But yeah, for any other language, just pick one randomly, go with it, learn about that. It's not very um, it's not a topic on which you should think about 2 or 3 days, right? It should be just a 10, 15, 20-minute research. And yeah, I mean, with Firebase, however, I would say that you should not really go for it initially, and I'll actually discuss it in the next slides as well, because it just spoon feeds you a lot. It's very convenient. And to be honest, when you're starting off, you don't want to be in your comfort zone. It's so convenient that you're gonna be loving backend. And honestly, I don't really want you guys to love backend when you're starting off, because if you're loving backend, you're liking how simple, how easy it is. And when you try, you start seeing the real picture, you're gonna hate it, right? When you're gonna see that you have to do so much work under the hood, what work goes under. So Firebase is okay. I would say it's a good choice, but start with the raw technology. Start with the raw players, MongoDB, MySQL, stuff like that. Topics, again, in database, you're gonna find a lot of things if you pick up any course, but these are some of the things I think you should know for sure. Tables, collections, if you are running a SQL, probably be a table. For NoSQL, like MongoDB, you have collection. Indexes is an important thing for performance. And yeah, number 3, popular ORMs is um, one of the things I would recommend, highly recommend, even just even without actually interacting with the database in a raw way as well. Because for stuff like MongoDB, you're gonna see that it's a schema-less database, so it gives you way too much freedom, honestly. The freedom beyond the point where you can actually get into bad practices. So if you use ORMs like Mongoose, you're gonna be restricted inside an environment where you are bound to do good coding, right? You're bound to create models, you're bound to create schemas, just do proper calls to the database, stuff like that. Otherwise, MongoDB is very, very forgiving. You don't really get bad habits. SQLize is also there for MySQL. These are the only two I have used, to be honest, as ORM, so I won't be really recommending any other thing. But of course, there are solutions for other programming languages, for other databases as well. Transactions is also one important thing I would say. Not really critically important, honestly, if you're not having a lot of real-time interaction or high volume data on your databases. So just keep that in your mind, but it's not very required thing. Understand about that. If you don't understand transactions a lot initially, don't really worry about that. How to learn? Again, set up your own projects using databases. I mean, when you bring in support for databases, you can literally do a lot of fun things. For example, authentication, number 1, you can authenticate users. You can help them create their profiles on your website, store their data. You can have multiplayer games, store the results. Basically, your backend, your server now has memory, right? So that is like an important thing, and important way to learn as well, by setting up your own projects. And MongoDB and MySQL, both of them are free, so you can literally just go on a free DigitalOcean service, just like a couple of slides ago, set up a droplet, set up your MongoDB instance, get an IP address, which is automatic, and you have a MongoDB database running out of the box. So there you have. For learning, YouTube playlist is, again, I would say, the recommended thing for now, because just like I said, for the back-end programming stuff, I won't be really going for YouTube playlist a lot, because you're gonna see that you have a lot of good back-end content, but that advanced things are usually missing. But for database, I would say a lot has been covered on YouTube, to be honest. You're gonna find a lot of great quality content here. MongoDB, MySQL, and because these are like traditional things, they're not really just changing breakingly every year or so. Even if the content is a little bit old, it won't be really outdated, right? It would just be missing a bunch of features, because usually databases like these don't really drop functionalities that easily. And again, just like I said, code done backend learning paths should contain database knowledge as a section. But again, this is under construction, under development right now, should be up by the end of this month. Your next part is linking knowledge. And I hope you guys are confused with this, but what this means is pretty simple. It just means that you have to connect your backend to some entity, right? Now, the thing is that you already have learned about backend and stuff, but it is of no use if external services cannot consume it, right? And how they consume it is by actually connecting to your backend, is by actually interacting with your computer. That was the whole point of backend development, right? To have computers which can interact with each other, which can connect with each other. Linking is basically just my word. It's not really a technical word, but this would allow you talk with front ends, right? Now this front end, mind you, could be anything. It could be a web app, it could be a, I don't know, it could be a mobile application, it could be a refrigerator over Internet of Things, IoT devices, anything which is a receiving end could be called as a front end, right? To communicate that, you have to expose certain pathways, certain APIs on your server, so that these front ends, what I'm talking about, mobile applications, IoT devices, websites, so that they can talk to your server, right? And we already know that the way to talk to your server is using IP addresses. The way to talk to your servers is using domains, which is resolved by DNS. The way to talk to your servers is, using HTTP for the most part. So yeah, I mean, this is like really important thing which I have personally seen a lot of people ask me as well, that how should you connect a particular technology, Java and front end, Java Spring Boot and front end? The answer is you connect it using APIs. Now there is only a single way for the server to communicate to the client, and that is by actually sending some data over the wire, right? So API is nothing but a simple endpoint, a simple path which is exposed to a client, which when the client calls, server sends a certain response in a structured data, for example JSON, right, or XML. Like JSON is the most widely used um, data format for APIs, but XML is also one of the options. So this is like important. You have to learn about APIs in order to connect backend services. Again, this would be required for authentication with mobile or web frontends. So if you want to authenticate people on web frontends, have support for cookies, right? But what about mobile applications? Mobile applications, when you're creating, especially when you're creating native applications, they don't really come in baked in with the cookie support, right? So what do you do then? Well, you revert back HTTP authentication, or maybe you have a custom header in your request which authenticates user, right? So you have to learn about this linking. Maybe you have a particular API which exposes a JSON, which exposes a JWT token which you can use to authenticate, stuff like that. We'll just discuss this now. So things I want you to learn for linking the stuff is REST API. Very important. REST API is basically just it's not really I wouldn't say it's an enforced standard or something. It's a guideline of what you should follow when you're creating an API. For example, you know that there are all these jokes and memes about 404 not found. Now this is used way out of context as well on internet. But the origin for this is that REST API states that if some resource is not found on the server, for example some HTML file or page from a static server or anything is not found, the server is supposed to return a 404 status code, right? Now you can very well return a 200 status code as well, but the problem is it's not really a problem, but it's just that the guideline says that the server should return a 404 so that whatever the client is, in our case the browser, understands that this resource was not found, because it's hard to actually see and process the page to determine that this content was not found. So you have to specify that as a header, as a status code itself, so that the browser can understand. Why this is useful? For example, consider the case of Google crawlers, right? So Google is crawling your website and it has no idea what your content really means unless it processes it later on. But initially it has to understand if it's looking at some actual content or it's some looking at a 404 template. So how do you do that? Using the REST API status code 404, right? So this is the REST has a lot of things, like you have a redirect code 301, 302, stuff like that. So you have to understand about that. JSON is also important data structure, I could say, rather, which you should know because you're going to be working with JSON APIs all the time, right? So this is like an important thing to understand. JSON data types, which data types are possible in JSON, which are not. And if you learned JavaScript, you're going to see that there are a lot of similarities between JSON and JavaScript objects. So you have to understand what works and what doesn't. JWT, HTTP headers, again, this is one of the things you can use to authenticate people on your backends if they do not have support for cookies. And this is very common in browserless environments, for example, mobile apps, just like I discussed. You're gonna make use of JWT, or maybe just HTTP headers, as a matter of fact, for the instruction to the server, that just telling the server who you are. GraphQL, again, a very promising solution in the space. I actually use GraphQL myself on CodeDam. So GraphQL basically says that, hey, let us just expose the whole database querying language to the client instead of server, and let's just only manage the validation and the connection to the database part. And it's a great solution, to be honest, especially for large applications where you could have a bunch of requirements, and it has a lot of advantages over REST API. But again, REST API is here to stay, right? So don't really think that you just get away with GraphQL. But these are some of the things I want you as a backend developer to have an understanding and have a good understanding as well. How to learn this stuff? Building projects involving using these. What do I mean by that? For example, if you want to learn about REST API, what you can do? Well, you have seen tools like Postman. Postman uses, it's basically an API client which you can send and receive. If I were to learn about APIs, my number one project right now today would be to actually recreate Postman, right? In some sort of web application or anything. It does not really matter. But recreating Postman would actually, at least some features, not really the whole application, but when you recreate it, you're going to understand how you have to, if user is selecting a put method, then you have to dispatch a put request. If user is selecting a patch method, you have to dispatch a patch request. And then whatever response you receive from the server, you're going to have to parse that. So basically, you're going to get a lot of understanding of how the REST API architecture works. And for the most part, I would say that if you're working with clients, like if you're recreating clients like Postman, you're gonna have a very good time learning learning the REST API, because it would basically cover everything. YouTube is again a good course. You can just go, you can YouTube, take a look at all the topics which I mentioned last slide: GraphQL, REST API, JWT, stuff like that. You're gonna have tons of content there. CodeDam backend learning path, again, very sorry, coming soon because it's not live yet. It would be most probably by the end of the month. And yeah, that's the end of the section. So coming to the Linux knowledge, this is something important, and this is something I want to discuss as well. What should you learn for Linux knowledge? First of all, let's just get into that as well while we discuss it. Linux knowledge, why it is required, what you should learn. The reason for that is that for the most part, if you're not a Microsoft employee, you're going to be deploying your websites, you're going to be deploying your stuff on Linux servers, right? Mac OS is out of the picture. Windows is out of the picture as well, honestly. I know a lot of people uses Windows for deployment and stuff as well, and it has a good support. But let's be honest here, Linux is what it is for servers, right? So you have to learn Linux, you have to learn, just some common things, some common commands and stuff, so that you have a good time when you're working with terminal, or good time when you're working with some sort of things which also Linux background. Bash scripting. Bash is like the most common shell. So, and a lot of shells actually share a lot of common things as well. So it's not that if you shift from Bash to ZSH, you're gonna lose all your knowledge. No, I think 99% of things are same in Bash and ZSH, except the fact that Bash is a very old shell, so it does not have a lot of fancy things which new shells ship with. So anyway, Bash scripting is one of the best ways to start with the Linux knowledge, honestly, because when you're writing commands, when you're storing things, you're going to understand how Linux store files, how Linux operates, the directory structure. Just like Windows, you have ABCD drives. There's not really a drive sort of concept in Linux. It's just that users have their own folders, stuff like that. So you're going to explore all of that stuff, right? Common Linux commands, obviously, grep, find, stuff like that. You should have those at least in your mind that these commands exist, because a lot of times what would happen is that you're going to see a lot of your manual work would be easily be done by a single command. But if you don't even know that is possible, then you might actually sit down and write a whole script for that particular thing, whole Node script or Python script or whatever. But later on you might find that it is already available on the internet. Here's a quick example from my experience only, which I learned. So while building CodeDam, you know that CodeDam supports the code execution thing on the platform under Playgrounds and Code Labs. So what happened was that when I was creating that thing, I needed some sort of way to actually monitor the files on the platform, right? So if you're creating a file, if you are creating a folder or whatever, that from the back end should reflect on the front end. So it's pretty much like how a file watcher would work. So if you create a new file, I want to get an event. If you create a new folder, I want to get an event, stuff like that. So initially I wrote down a whole script for that because I did not do my homework, I did not research enough, and that script was slow. It was not optimized for large scale file deletion and removal and all those stuffs, because that was not really a robust solution, honestly. But yeah, I mean, what happened is that then I found out that there's a iNotify tools Linux utility itself, which helps do the exact same thing. So just know about things that they exist, because that would save you a lot of time, right? Also, common monitoring utilities in Linux like htop, free, stuff like that would help you to actually determine the health of your server as well, so that your server is not really runs out of memory or hard disk, stuff like that. And editing files in shell is also one of the important things, because you won't really have VS Code or Sublime Text support right away on a server, right? So there you have it. Topics I think are important are cron jobs. I would say cron jobs is super interesting to me because it just allows you to automate a lot of stuff. And if you have a custom based setup for databases and stuff, what you want is regular backups, some sort of regular request and stuff like that. For that, cron jobs is beautiful, right? It executes beautifully, it does the work which is said. So learn about these stuff. For example, if you want to repeat a particular thing every single hour or every single day, you might very well write a node script and run it, but it's not an efficient way. Linux ships with cron jobs. So there you have it, that's your solution. Well, there are swap partitions and open file limits. Honestly, I don't know why I put it here, but yeah, just take a look at that as well. It's not really required for basic stuff. It's more for intermediate developers who have less RAM on their servers. For example, if you're running a $5 DigitalOcean instance and you want to extract every single performance ounce out of it, so you might just create a swap partition for that. Open file limits, again, Linux restricts how many files are opened at a particular time, and every socket, every connection is considered as a file. So if you want to have more traffic on your system, have the higher number of file limits, stuff like that. Port forwarding, again, related to SSH, which we'll just cover now. Commands like grep, find, curl, SSH, these are some of the commands I think you should know, and this is again not an exhaustive list at all, but these are some of the things I believe you should know as an individual, because they save a lot of time. Trust me, they save a lot of time. They make your workflow easy, and in a lot of cases there are no alternatives. For example, like SSH, I don't really know if SSH wasn't there. um, FTP is there, but what SSH offers is unbeatable, right? With the port forwarding stuff, super powerful. Topics to cover for Linux knowledge, I would say I would go with Nano, Vim, stuff like that, because just learn about one of the editors. It's very useful to have a basic understanding of how to work with at least one of them. Not really mastery or anything, but just understand how you can work with these, because later on when you're editing files on server, just like I said, you won't be having access to VS Code or Sublime or any other GUI editor all the time. So this is something which would keep you alive in the server space to edit the files. Then also learn about account management on Linux, how you can create users, remove users, how you can give groups. I think I missed the groups here, but it should be there. How you should create groups on Linux server, sudo, what is sudo, how it works, package managers, like apt-get, difference between apt and apt-get, if you're working with Ubuntu or Debian. Permissions, like just like we saw with the commands, the change ownership, change file permissions, stuff like that. Just understand about this basic Linux things, right? stdin, stdout, what this is, how it works, how you can redirect certain things to a file, bash redirection, stuff like that. So this is all, this is not, again, not an exhaustive list, but I just want you to have your mindset created in such a way that, yep, you are aware about a lot of things which exist which you don't know, because that is the step one for learning anything, right? You have to accept that you don't really know something, because if you're somebody who just thinks that you know everything, then you're not gonna learn, right? So you have to create that void, you have to create that gap within yourself that you do not really know a lot of things yet. That is when you're gonna start learning. So yeah, reverse proxies as well, not really strictly speaking Linux knowledge, but might as well chip in Nginx and HA proxy. So yeah, how to learn this stuff: setting up servers yourself, the best way. I mean, the moment you create a $5 DigitalOcean instance, and the moment you get an SSH credential with you, you're gonna learn so much. I mean, when you create a DigitalOcean droplet, you're gonna see that you have an option to create a password based or a SSH key. At that very moment, you're gonna understand about what an SSH key is when you Google it, obviously. So when you Google stuff like that, you're gonna understand, hey, well, I have the option for password as well. Why should I create an SSH key? What is the advantage of an SSH key? Well, that's a question, right? You would Google it even more, read about 10 links, and you're gonna have a good understanding. So this was like even before SSHing into the server. You're learning even before doing that stuff. So when you are into the server, when you want to set up a server, you're gonna install Nginx. You're gonna make use of sudo apt-get install Nginx. You're gonna write sudo apt-get update. Why do you write sudo apt-get update? Why do you write sudo apt-get install Nginx? What happens when the Nginx is installed? Systemd. What happens when a software is installed or is removed or is killed? And I think I missed that part, but you should probably learn a bit about the Linux processes as well. Honestly, as a backend developer, that won't really enhance your backend skills precisely, but that is very the knowledge which you should have, honestly. So yeah, I mean, just go ahead and set up servers. That is like the best way to learn. YouTube about Linux basics. I think there are a lot of decent and great videos as well available on YouTube. Playlist as well. I don't have any recommendations at the moment because I haven't really seen myself, but I'm pretty sure because Linux is uh, so I would say has been there for so long, it's obvious that there would be a lot of content on. Again, Codedamn Linux basics learning path is coming soon. Can't really promise it by the end of this month because backend development is the one thing, but yeah, this would be available in the next month sometime. Checkpoint, you are a backend developer at this point, right? So I would say you are qualified to call yourself a backend developer, and don't really worry about if you are good, amazing, okayish at this point, thing you have to realize is that I told you a lot of things um, in the previous slides, because a lot of those things are not really, strictly speaking, they're not really required to call yourself a backend developer. But still, at this point, even if you are able to skip a bunch of things, here and there, and if you're able to reach at this point, you can call yourself a backend developer. But don't worry about, if you're not amazing at this point, because you have to reiterate over all the things I have said before again and again and again by setting up servers again and again for your different projects, learning from different blogs, different sources, whether it's Udemy code down learning paths, YouTube, anything. So it's not a single pass expertise. That's what I want to say. It's a multi-pass expertise. You can't really get expert with a single pass of learning. It never happens that way. But yeah, this is something you can call yourself on a paper. Like, you're a backend developer now. You can at least start applying for jobs and internships. So the backend cheat sheet, what we discussed really, is pick up programming language. This is I'll just be honest with you, this is now my tech stack. So pick up a programming language. I just picked up Node. I actually used to work with PHP a lot in the past, and I don't know if I have that audience available, which remember that the first version of CodeDam, which was there in 2016, 16ish, I don't really hear also, it's 15 or was built on PHP. It was completely PHP, and that was a fun time, honestly. But yeah, I mean, I shifted from PHP to Node.js simply because I found JavaScript much more interesting. So why not just use it on the back end as well? Database, MongoDB. Just pick up any database, just like what I said earlier. I chose MongoDB. I've worked with MySQL in the past, but yeah, I mean, that's my choice at the moment. Linux distribution, I'm most comfortable with Ubuntu because, there are other Linux distributions as well, but for example, CentOS, but they differ in the um, package managers, in the configuration, where you're going to find configuration files. CentOS also ships with SE Linux, a lot of security and stuff. CentOS is basically built for production, I understand that, but the way I have learned things, I'm most comfortable with Ubuntu and Debian, matter of fact. Then just know about TCP, HTTP, creating servers, protocols. Should be protocol friendly. You should know about what TCP is, what UDP is, what is the difference. Even though if you're not implementing raw TCP servers yourself, just have an understanding on how this stuff, right? You should understand how the HTTP protocol works, how you can create servers yourself. So have that information, have that knowledge with you. Now, when you're done with the backend, and when you're done with the whole, just on the paper backend developer thing, you want to supercharge your backend skill. Now, what do I mean by that? This is something I believe you can put in your bucket list to be a great, unbeatable backend developer. Now, honestly, I would say the lines are a little blurry here, because you could have technically another developer for cloud computing and stuff, but as a backend engineer, I would really want to be able to understand at least what's going on in the cloud or DevOps, the advanced parts of things, right? In fact, I would have included front end here as well. I think I missed that. But as a backend developer, you should also have a little bit of understanding for front end as well, because in that way you can actually understand what's going on. It's not a black box for you. The one thing I think which puts most people behind is that when they consider themselves very good or master or whatever, they sort of, or rather I should say that the one thing which separates from people who are very good at something on their tech stack, they have the complete picture of the puzzle, right? So if you are a web developer, if you want to call yourself a web developer, the complete picture would probably involve front end, back end, setting up your server on DigitalOcean, on AWS, anything, deploying a CI/CD solution, which is DevOps. So if you're just wanting to become a backend developer, it's fine, but these are all the pieces of the puzzle which you have to, which is good to have on your bucket, right? So this is what I want to do, just put out. So what is cloud knowledge? What you should know about cloud computing? I would say pick one of the cloud providers, DigitalOcean, AWS, Google Cloud. Let's see how much. Yeah. So this is it. So I recommend DigitalOcean for beginners. Now, I think I did not write it here, but DigitalOcean is a great choice if you're starting off, but not a very good choice if you have, some sort of advanced requirements, because a lot of tooling is missing from DigitalOcean, to be honest. AWS, on the other hand, provides you with the whole tooling, right? AWS has a set of services, a lot of services, probably the maximum services there are in a cloud provider. But the place where I don't like AWS is their high data charges, number one, and their unpredictable pricing. So as a beginner, I won't really recommend you to go to AWS, because AWS gets nasty with costs, because there are a lot of hidden costs in AWS. There are a lot of things which can go wrong if you do not understand the platform. With DigitalOcean, the costs are fixed, right? So you have a $5 instance, it's going to be a $5 instance no matter whatever you do. Obviously, unless you are just crossing some tremendous limits, like 1 terabyte of data transfer per month, which is not really feasible for most of the people. But yeah, I mean, that's for the most part. Just learn about things like any cloud provider, DigitalOcean, AWS Cloud, Azure, and learn about the most popular services of this cloud as well. I think I have a course on DigitalOcean as well. You can find it on the YouTube channel. It's a pretty long video, actually, 2 hours or 3. So that goes over all the DigitalOcean basics. So your field that if you want. Learn about deploying instances. Like, there are services like Amazon Elastic Beanstalk, or in fact Heroku as well has a service where you can just upload your source code and you're done. They just handle the server initialization, booting stuff, all that. But the idea is that you want to learn how to actually deploy things, how to start from 0 to 100, how to go from 0 to 100, right? So what you want to do is learn about deploying these things from scratch. That is, you have to go to the AWS console, create an EC2, get the credentials, open a terminal, SSH into the machine, and actually set it up. This way you're gonna learn a lot of stuff about cloud as well as about Linux engine, just like I talked. Learn about your use cases. For example, one of the most common use case I find is sending email, right? Whatever product you're building, whatever things you're building, for example, you're building some sort of service, or you're building some sort of product or whatever, emails is a central part for most of them. And I see a lot of people who spend a lot of money on services like MailChimp, or I don't really know a lot of them, but yeah, you can actually go ahead and take a look at services like AWS Simple Email Service. They offer, I think, 10 cents for 1,000 email, stuff like that. So just build your awareness about these things, right? That is the cloud knowledge part. Nginx, learn about Nginx and stuff, how you can work with Nginx over the cloud, how you can deploy auto scaling stuff, load balancing, how that works. To be honest, this is not really something I would recommend for beginners or anything. Like, if you're just starting off, don't really get into that. But yeah, that is fine for the most part. Now, coming back to the DevOps, that is the part where you actually do a lot of developer plus operations things. I would say don't really get into a lot of DevOps as a backend developer, because there could be a lot of things going on. But for the most part, I want you to get familiar with the CI/CD tools: continuous integration, continuous deployment. And two beautiful solutions for this is GitHub Actions and Circle CI, which I have personally used, and I can recommend like 200% for GitHub Actions. It's the free tier of GitHub Actions is very promising, and most likely you're never going to run out of free tier for GitHub Actions. Learn about Dockerizing applications. This is like something which is very important, because when you're learning about containers and stuff, and portability and scalability, you're gonna understand that how the environments of the application have a huge impact on development and operations. So when you containerize them, when you create a stable, consistent environment using Docker and containers, that is very beneficial. Managing and rotating logs is also one of the important things, I would say, because logs are the place where you can basically find anything and everything the things which went wrong with your application, right? So that is like an important thing. And automatic backups, I think these services and AWS and DigitalOcean have the backups and stuff in place. But what I want really is people to actually understand that they can create their own backup services as well. Just like I have a script which runs with a cron job 4 times a day, which takes the snapshot of the database running and uploads it on Google Drive, for example, right? So this is how you can learn about scripting, as well as having some sort of automatic backups in place. You can even take a snapshot of your instance if you're DigitalOcean, or for AWS I don't really know what the service is, but definitely they will have that. So learn about the services which can enhance your things. Tools, again, GitHub Actions, Circle CI, stuff like that. Kubernetes is for containers, and Docker is obviously for containerization. Now, for the advanced knowledge, I would say that what should happen is that you should understand about some of these things. Now, this is again not something for beginners. I won't really say that go ahead and learn about serverless right away. But yeah, just keep this awareness that something known as serverless architecture actually exists, right? Like AWS Lambdas, Cloudflare Workers, these are the two solutions for serverless. By serverless, what you mean is that you now don't have to do all that SSH part, right? When you have to create an instance, when you have to create SSH keys, when you have to actually log in into SSH, you don't have to do that stuff. So why this is beneficial? Because of performance reasons, because of cost reasons, because of multiple reasons in production when you're running a real application. But when you're learning, don't really opt in for serverless and stuff, because it looks fancy. It is a shiny object, but trust me, in order to understand serverless, you should actually understand servers as well, because serverless is not really serverless at all. It actually involves servers anyway, just hidden from you. Microservices, again, some sort of architectural pattern. You're going to see a lot of architectural patterns as well. Microservices is one of the popular ones. CDNs and caching, when you're working with cloud services like AWS and DigitalOcean, as well, as a matter of fact, you're going to learn about AWS CloudFront. S3 is also a good service. External CDNs are good. So just learning about these advanced things, and to be honest, all this knowledge would naturally come to you automatically when you're done with the basics and intermediate things. Then you're going to explore these new things, what more can be done. So for the most part, you don't really have to worry about this advanced knowledge stuff. So let's just get into quick takeaways from the talk, and then we can have a quick Q&A session. Pick a programming language first. Learn it by building things. That is like the 300 millionth time I'm saying the same thing. Learn about networking. That is what we discussed, right? Most importantly, SSH and HTTP, because these are two important protocols with us. And start creating servers yourself. Start setting up servers by yourself, because when you do that, you're going to actually understand a lot of things. Pick a cloud provider like DigitalOcean or AWS or whatever it is, and just go with it. Databases are important. Again, just like I said, you have to pick up any one database and start working with it. MongoDB, MySQL are possible good choices, I would say. And avoid backend as a service for learning, like Firebase and stuff, because that just gives you a very a very convenient platform for building things, and you don't really want convenience initially. You want to have to go through the actual process when you're learning stuff, right? And learn about Linux server management. This is also important. Understand that backend is vast. I mean, I have probably touched a lot of points in this talk, but those points in themselves are very, very deep, right? For example, just take a language, programming language, Node.js. It takes a lot of time to actually master something or actually get to a decent level with Node.js or anything like that. So understand that each part is vast, and don't hope for becoming a good backend developer overnight or great backend developer in a week. It will take a lot of time, and to be honest, more than front end, because at front end I don't know, I just feel like backend is much more organized and much more resourceful than front end. But yeah, at least for me, I learned front end much quicker than I learned back end. So yeah. And important, explore your ecosystem, right? So you have to understand which language you're working with, which technologies you're working with, and that is what you want to get into eventually. For example, taking the example for Node.js, you have solutions like Next.js for server-side rendering and even serverless deployment. Gatsby is also there. So these are like solutions available for you for creating stuff with Jamstack and stuff. But you know, this is like, this thing is for Node.js ecosystem. So I'm aware about some popular solutions, some common solutions which are available right now for the Node.js ecosystem. Similarly, if you're working with Python, you should have the understanding about the ecosystem for that, like how you should deploy good production ready applications with Python. You know, what are the tools which you should use, what is the best reverse proxy for your server. So you should have all that understanding with you, right, from your ecosystem, whatever you're working. Now, I specifically don't really know a lot about Python ecosystem, and I don't really need to know either, because I'm involved in a greater depth with the Node side. Similarly, just pick up your place, pick up the thing which you like, and try to create a powerful skill set, try to create a powerful ecosystem around that. Learn about Docker and containers in general, and benefits, what it brings, what value it brings on the table. Yeah, just learn about these additional technologies as well, which provide much more security, performance, stuff like that. So it would be good for your own knowledge. And I believe that's pretty much it. Let's just take some questions now. If you have any questions, just put them in the chat and I'll happy to answer them for you. Yes, Gotham, you can watch the live stream again. I think you can just go ahead and watch it. All right. What about Netlify? Yes, Netlify is also a great option for deployment. I did not really go into um, the Node.js side of, well, Netlify is, exactly speaking, not really just for Node and stuff, but I did not really go into specific technologies in this talk, because then it would be way too long, right? Because if I just start going into Cloudflare, Netlify, DNS, stuff like that, if I go into depths, it would take a lot of time. But yes, Netlify is a very good option for hosting your website. Node or Dino? Node for now, Dino for later. That's all I would say. Don't really bet on Dino yet, because it's, number one, not really as popular as Node at the moment, and it has a long road to. We'll see where Dino would go. Can you explain? Can you explain more about Next.js? Next.js is just a server-side rendering utility for your React applications. We can get into depth with a Next.js complete course or some video, But for the most part, it's just like, just you're rendering your React application on server instead of on client. You're sending the raw HTML, that is the constructed HTML, to the client, and then the client rehydrates that page. That means it rehydrates the HTML. It adds the event listeners like click, double click, keyboard events, stuff like that, and makes your application interactive for the client. The two advantages for Next.js are the SEO, number one, and number two is the performance for the clients. And as a matter of fact, just a couple of days back, I shifted the whole CodeDAM architecture on Next.js, and yeah, I mean, the speed has been great. And obviously the server-side rendering benefits it brings on the table. That is, number one, the static exports, where you can actually get the whole documents as static files is great. What are your thoughts on GraphQL? Amazing technology. Again, I use GraphQL myself on CodeDAM with Next.js. So yeah, it's working great for me so far. I mean, if you have any specific question about GraphQL, that I can answer, but that's my only thought about GraphQL, right? It's awesome. Thank you, Sumit. It asks, can we get job opportunity in Big Four if we learn full stack development? Um, I don't know, honestly, because I would be honest with you, I have been doing a lot of full stack work and stuff and everything for a long time now, and the fact is that you have to pass the interviews for the companies, at least for the Big Four, and there would be some sort of algorithmic round or some sort of round in which you have to do some competitive style question, not really competitive as well, but some sort of deep algorithmic knowledge question. So if you have a very good understanding of backend development, how to set up servers, how to have production ready applications, work with Nginx, Cloudflare, stuff like that, you probably won't be able to clear the round just based on that. You need to have some sort of interview preparation as well. And I know the system is broken, even though if you, after getting selected, you're going to work on that same technology. But yeah, I mean, that barrier, that virtual barrier is there. I'm a newbie. Should I first completely master front end before going to backend? No, not at all. I mean, if you want to become a front end developer only, then master front end. But if you want to deploy your whole applications yourself, and especially that's what happened with me, I was a sole learner. Honestly, I started off early, so I did not really worked in a team or any company or anything before. So if I created some sort of front end, I had to create backend for that as well. So I started learning them parallelly, right? I was learning front end as well as back end. So it's about how you distribute your time, how you distribute your energy, your resources, and stuff like that. So just look for that. You can obviously go ahead and learn both together. Can I learn backend without GraphQL? Yes, you can. GraphQL is not a requirement for learning backend. GraphQL is just a way to create APIs on your server. As a matter of fact, you can create APIs just using REST architecture as well. So obviously, backend does not require GraphQL. What do you think the future of WASM WebAssembly is? The future is bright. The best minds are working on WASM right now, and yeah, I mean, the best benefits would be on the front end side. Although WebAssembly is going to be compatible everywhere, because that's the whole point, right? But yeah, I mean, it would take some time for WASM to get adopted, to be honest, because I think it was released in 2017 or 2016, and it's still very young. Most of the major browsers still support it, but the tooling is not available right now. The right tooling is not available for WASM at the moment. So that's why the adoption is slow at the moment. But I'm pretty sure in the next 2, 3, 4 years, we're going to see something impressive from WebAssembly. So that's definitely something to keep your eye on if you're someone who lives on the edge. You said REST is going to stay instead of GraphQL. Yep, that's what I said. REST is going to stay. GraphQL is also going to stay, but honestly, what we have seen over the years, GraphQL is old now. I think I don't really know the launch date, but it has been around for a long time now. And it was, when it was out there, it was pitched as a replacement for REST API, but that really did not happen. If you see the trends, there are still so many applications, so many things built just on REST and not on GraphQL. Although I realize that GraphQL is a very good solution, but still REST is going to stay as well. That's at least what the data says, not me. Can you tell a very good project for MERN stack which I can learn it and also get a very good project on my resume? I would say the best projects which would help you learn is, number one, just go for your creativity, things you want to, just things you wanted to implement always, because that's at least how I started off when I was creating stuff. I wanted to do some things, but if you don't have any ideas yet, try to recreate popular services. Like, just like I said in front end talk as well. For example, if you want, you can recreate, for example, Discord, right? If you're learning backend, try to recreate Discord like service. You have channels, you have options to create servers, and mind you, this is not an easy job. This is not an easy project, but it is a very impressive project if you can pull this off, obviously correctly. So you need to have, all sorts of good choices for database, for servers, for programming languages, stuff like that. So, and this project like this would actually shine on your resume as well. Which one is the better front-end tech now? I think at this point you have to give me options, right? Because just ask like that, I would say there are a lot of options, but obviously for the most part, Angular, React, Vue, things like these are popular at the moment. Where to stop with learning DevOps if we just want to backend developer and not much of a DevOps engineer? I think in this case, it's a good question. What you have to do is just learn enough to deploy your websites in an autonomous way on backend, right? So I would say just learn for the most part, for backend developers, I would say the CI/CD part is enough with GitHub Actions. That's it. Just learn about configuration of a YML file on GitHub Actions, building your project on GitHub and deploying it using SSH deployment or anything you have. Just figure that much part out for the DevOps part, and you're good to go. Then you can focus back on your back-end development skills, right? How to make a Heroku like service by scratch? Okay. um this is not something I think I could just go ahead and speak up on a live stream flawlessly, because it would require some understanding on pen and paper. But Heroku allows you to deploy your own websites on subdomains and stuff and launches instances in the cloud, right? I don't know if they use their own cloud or they have associations with AWS and stuff, so I can't really speak to that. But for the most part, what you want is, you want to have some sort of architecture which, number one, enables you to create users. That is what comes to my mind initially. Number two, select a sort of a computational instance. At least that's what I can offer upfront to the user, right? Which would be linked to certain instance which you can create on the backend if you are using AWS or DigitalOcean or stuff like that. Or if you have a data center of your own, which most probably Heroku would have, then I mean it gets on the hardware level stuff, right? Then you have to get into serious networking and stuff. So yeah, I mean, for AWS and DigitalOcean and stuff, which is easier to create, what you have to do is interact with those cloud providers through their APIs. So most of the cloud providers have APIs which you can use to dynamically create and remove instances. So the crux of this problem is to implement a good API structure, the good calling API structure from your own server to that of DigitalOcean or AWS, to create and remove instances on the run, or maybe just upscale or downscale as well. What about PostgreSQL? Yes, that is also a great option, but honestly, I have never used it myself. I've just, read about it a lot. It's a good option, but for the most part, MySQL is also a good option if you're starting off as a beginner. And the fact that you know about PostgreSQL and it might be a competitive option for MySQL, that means that you can go ahead with the former. SQL having two-way communication like Firebase. I don't know if that's a question or if you're saying that, but if that's a question, no, it is not a two-way communication. Because Firebase actually opens a WebSocket to the server if you have actually looked under the hood. So you can basically get a similar architecture with SQL databases as well. It's just that you have to implement a backend in the middle for that. How to be strong on SQL? Well, by I would say creating a lot of things which require a database and which might require you to manipulate and extract out data in creative ways. I think for this, instead of like creating applications, one better way would be to actually do some sort of data analysis or something on big data, right? So I have seen that there are APIs and stuff available on Google Cloud for big data. So you can, for example, the other year, I think the last year, I used some Google Cloud Big Data API to extract out how many stars a GitHub repo has, right? So you can basically get out information about GitHub repos from Google Cloud Big Data. So you can practice skills on that. For example, just create a huge data set for yourself on your local system and try to pull out the data with SQL queries, and obviously learn with the video content and resources here and there as well, which would actually help you equip with the available things. Once you know what is available, just use that. Is data structures and algorithms is really important for backend development? It's not quote really important unquote for backend development, but yeah, I mean, if you have that, it would help you with the logic building and things, especially if you're doing some sort of creative stuff on the back end, right? So that is like an important thing. What do you think? Will the web development still be in demand, or it would be app development? Web development is obviously here to stay because a lot of things have been going on in development. A lot of improvements have been there in the past 2, 3, 4 years, and web is sort of like achieving the native experience as well now with all these things, Electron and React Native, Ionic, stuff like this. It's enabling web to move to native. So yeah, I mean, web is obviously going to be. I have been doing Spring Boot past from 6 months. So should I move to learn Docker? Spring Boot and Docker are completely unrelated technologies, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, you can obviously learn Docker with Spring Boot if that's your question. But yeah, for the most part, Spring Boot is not really a replacement for Docker and vice versa. Is Rust close to JavaScript? Well, not really, because Rust is a completely different language. Though I have written all your points, still will be waiting for your roadmap video. Thanks for helping. It's pretty hard for anyone to know how to start if there's no. I absolutely appreciate that. Yeah, I understand that if you don't have a clear picture ahead of you, you're gonna have a lot of struggling in the way. At least that's how I learn things, because I did not really have any resources available at my disposal right away. So I have to do a lot of Googling and stuff. But yeah, that's what I'm trying to build with CodeDam and CodeDam learning paths and all that stuff. So absolutely, thank you for that. How to practice microservices? Are videos are there? Any videos are there? Microservices is not really a a theoretical topic, I would say. It's an architecture style, right? So um, you have to just decompose your applications. You just have to read about. I mean, yeah, you can say it's a theoretical thing, honestly, because you have to just understand what goes into creating a micro architecture, microservices architecture, right? So just Google that. You're gonna understand. You have to decompose your services into reusable and loosely decoupled. All that definition stuff. Then watch a couple of videos. Maybe read some of the blogs of people who are actively engaged in the space and learn from them. So yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of things you have to actively learn in the microservices space, but it's more about taking your existing code and just decomposing it. Will backend knowledge help me in blockchain? Honestly, I have not a lot of experience with blockchain, but yeah, I mean, given the fact that blockchain says that we are decentralizing stuff, so I think backend knowledge should be um, not very much required for a decentralized stuff, because backend literally means that you have a central server. Docker versus Kubernetes. I think you should just copy paste this on Google and read the first 10 things. But yeah, for the most part, Docker is just a service to create containers. Kubernetes is to manage them, right? Just like Docker Compose is to manage them as well, but Kubernetes brings in more tools and more functionalities with it. Yeah. Options to protect video from download from IDM, like SW. Well, I don't know how you can do that, to be honest, because the only thing that is possible right now, the maximum security you can achieve is through DRM protection, with sites like Netflix and Amazon Prime Video follows. But to be honest, people can record their screens, right? So that there's not a lot of things you can do to protect that fact. If you're streaming something online, it could be leaked no matter what you do, right? So yeah, I mean, you can just go ahead and look up on DRM protection, but that's only thing you get. Can you please tell me complete React Native video is available in your channel that I can refer blindly? I think you should never refer something blindly. That's at least what I do. You should always, consume from 2, 3, 4, 5 places so that you get a different perspective. But yes, you can go to the Code Damn playlist section, and there should be a React Native playlist for you. I think I have a React Native course on codedamn.com as well as on Udemy if you want. Should I join a startup that does not have a competitive coding round that gives me projects based on WebD for summer internship, or try to learning competitive coding it for on-campus internship rounds? So, I mean, it depends on what you want to do. Um, Startups obviously won't really bother about your competitive stuff unless they are actively involved in something which requires a deep algorithmic understanding or optimization. For the most part, startups want to get work done, to get services created. So yeah, I mean, if I were you, I would opt in for a startup instead of sitting on campus placement where everyone is fighting for limited resources when there are unlimited resources available in the world. So I mean, yeah, it boils down to you if you want to sit for internships campus. And Harish, I did not sit for internships in our college, and neither for placements. So if that's what answers your question. AWS versus DigitalOcean versus Google Cloud. AWS, set of good tools, great amount of functionalities, features, but a tricky service on pricing. DigitalOcean, nice, simple, easy for developers to start. and fixed pricing as well, but a lot of tools are not available. And Google Cloud is sort of like AWS only, to be honest. I mean, it's not that Google Cloud has some sort of super advantage over it. So yeah. I was working as full stack and now as front end. Please give me tips because I forgot some stuff about backend stuff. So the idea is that obviously if you're not using something, if you're not using your knowledge over a certain amount of time, you're gonna lose that information. But it's easy to pick up, right? So if you forgot about backend stuff, just pick up a side project by yourself which involves backend, and you're gonna quickly just start understanding stuff. It has happened to me a lot of times, especially in the mobile development world side, because that's not something I do actively, but yeah, I mean, whenever I wanted to just get a refresh, I just pick up a checked, maybe it's a game or anything on mobile development, and it just gives me that refresher I need. So you just need a refresher, pick up a side project, maybe pick up a playlist if you want, a course playlist or anything. Just go through it as well, see what trends you have missed for the past 1-2 years, and you should be good to go. Inspired by you, created a channel. How to grow? Just close your eyes and just start putting out valuable content. That's the only advice I have. The formula in today's world to grow is to actually give out valuable things instead of just having some sort of um, advertisement or sort of clever motive behind your content. So if your content is free, make sure it's valuable as well. Like if you're pitching it as valuable, it should be valuable. That's how you're gonna grow. I want to learn systems design. Please suggest me some free course, free resources. Honestly, I don't know money on some free resources like that, which I can go ahead and suggest you. But Google and YouTube are your friends, to be honest. I mean, I have been saying this for a very long time. Just go ahead on Google, just write how should I learn systems design, how should I learn uh, that particular topic, whatever you want, and yeah, you're gonna see a lot of content, a lot of great people doing a lot of stuff, and just start from there. I think I have a guy who creates a lot of great videos on system design. I actually forgot his name. But yeah, I mean, if you he has videos for WhatsApp design, system design, and something. I honestly forgot his name. Yeah, but I mean, if you just Google WhatsApp system, if you just go to YouTube and Google WhatsApp system design, his video should be on number. He's a great guy to learn from for the system design part. So you can consider that as one of my recommendations. Please make a video related to microservices using Node.js. Okay, I would remember that. Just throw it on my bucket list to do. Yeah. Can you please tell me learning resources you provide besides YouTube, free or paid? I'm new to your channel. Um, the resources I provided, the first one was the CodeDam learning paths. You can find the CodeDam learning paths on codedam.com/learning-paths. Learning paths is basically a complete path you can follow, or just follow from in between, whatever you like, to acquire a particular skill set. So I have some courses of mine there. I have some course external creators as well, and I'm working actively on improving paths and introducing new paths as well. One of the paths, which is the backend learning path, which we just discussed in this video, so it should be up. Apart from CodeDam learning paths, it really depends on the technology you're learning, right? Because if you're learning, for example, front end, I would say YouTube is a good solution. CodeDam learning path is a good solution. Free code camp is a good solution. Just free blog articles is a good solution. If you're learning backend, you can go for some Udemy courses. You can go for some YouTube playlists. CodeDam learning path is also available. So stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, for the most part, that's all you would need. I also heard there was a lot of DSA in the Google interview. Yep, not a lot of DSA. I would say there were 2 questions, but yeah, those 2 questions had a lot of DSA. So how does Derby.js compare to Next.js? Honestly, I don't know about that. About the Derby.js. I've never used it, and as a matter of fact, never even heard about it. So sorry, I cannot answer your question for that. But for Next.js, it's amazing. How do we grow quickly in our software development career? I'm learning 100% writing. I'm currently React Native developer, and I want to grow. And how do I do it? You do it by being patient. You're putting it 100%, but you cannot, buy time. It would take that particular amount of time which it would take, right, for you to learn something and for you to level up. And that particular time is more or less different for everybody and depends on the skill set you're learning as well. So yeah, I mean, for the most part, just learn about just keep learning, be patient, and yeah, I think Mike is fine. Just keep learning, be patient, and this should be it for your growth. Yes, I was referring to God of Sin. Exactly. Uh, this channel has a lot of this channel has a lot of good system designs video. I'm just a fresher who got into a company. I'm learning the MEVN I guess, stack, and along with that, I'll need to learn a CMS apostrophe. I haven't joined yet, but I'm learning how. Um, you should just go ahead and join the company, whatever you're working for, and learn the things as they come to you. Honestly, at this point, that's all you could do. Because to be honest, your tech stack is not very difficult to get into if you're even if you're just starting off from scratch, which I hope you are not. So for the most part, I think you should just go ahead, accept the offer, start working, and start spending a lot of time on learning these skills. Because Mern, yeah, Mern and MEV and Stack, these have a lot of resources available on the internet for you to learn from. So you should not have a problem. I have my backend and front end both ready. Explain me all procedures to make my site live without paying any penny. And I want my domain name. Is it possible or not? Please elaborate. Um, Technically speaking, it's possible to host your website absolutely for free. For example, just like you said, you have backend and front end code ready. So if I want to host it for $0, what I'm gonna do is, first of all, I'm gonna register a free domain name from .tk, just like I mentioned. Once I have a free domain name, I'm gonna go to, first of all, I'm gonna check if my site actually needs a backend or not. If it does not need a backend, I'm gonna use a solution like Netlify or Vercel or GitHub Pages. But if it needs backend, that is if it has some database requirements or anything, then I'm gonna check if I can use a free service like Firebase. If you can use a free service like Firebase for backend, then again, you're good to go. You're free. That part is free. But if you cannot use Firebase for some reason or whatever, then what I'm gonna do is go to site like DigitalOcean or Google Cloud for signing up for their free trial of cloud computing, right? So Google Cloud offers $300 of credit for 1 year. DigitalOcean offers $100 credit. AWS offers a 1 year free trial for some of their services. So just sign up for a trial and start your website, start hosting your website. But honestly, I would recommend, if you are doing something serious, something which is where people would actually interact with your website and everything, just go ahead and purchase a domain. It's not a lot. It's $8 a year. And for the hosting part, I would say you can start off with the free trial, but eventually start uh with the paying hosting as well, if you can, obviously. But yeah, your opinion on WASM, other binary based executable programs for the web. Wasm, I think Wasm is the only available solution for binary based execution programs on the web, right? So yeah, I mean, there was a question earlier on that. So I believe Wasm's future is promising, very promising, honestly, but it will still take some time for us to actually see what's happening in the real world with the Wasm thing, because you know the toolkit is still missing. There's not a lot of support, not a lot of resources as well, honestly, I would say, because only a few top players are playing with Wasm right now. But yeah, it's promising. The performance benefit it brings to the web and the portability it brings to the backend services and everything, it's promising. Which stack has more job opportunity now in the market, like Mon, Lamp, or Jam? If I miss anything, please tell me that stack also. Every stack has some sort of opportunity. That's what uh, I see as a wrong question. A lot of people ask this question. You're gonna master a stack, and then you're gonna find companies which are using that stack, right? For the most part, you're gonna see that a lot of skills are transferable from stack to stack as well. But what you want to do is you want to master a stack, you want to start learning a stack like Mern or Mean, whatever you mentioned. And once you are good enough with that, you're gonna see that you can now approach companies which use that as their primary stack, right? So they use that as their primary stack, and you can actually help them out with the development work or creating work, stuff like that. So the right question is that the right fact is, as a matter of fact, is that you should pick up something which you can master or you can be very good at, and then find companies where you can provide your value. That is the right approach. So yeah, I think that's it for the live stream. Again, we hit 2 hours. So I hope you guys learned a lot. If you learned, don't forget to like and visit the Codedam site as well with the learning parts. I'm doing some interesting stuff there. Yeah, just create an account on codedam.com. You would be automatically added in notifications list for being informed as people want to learn about new features. So yeah, I'll just take a couple of more questions. Do you know about Coding Garden with CJ? No, but is that a YouTube channel or something? I don't really know. Any comment on Gatsby versus Node.js as a future Jamstack? Node.js is not a Jamstack. Do you mean Next.js? Gatsby is obviously good, but Next.js is more than, you know, just a Jamstack technology, because you can actually run Node code as well. And honestly, I would be honest, I don't have a lot of experience with Gatsby personally, so I don't know if that also is bringing some features like this. But yeah, I would place my bet on Next.js for now. I think Flask is still worth learning. Flask, yeah, obviously if you're trying to get into Python and stuff, then Flask is a good choice, I would say. So thank you, everybody. That's it, I think. Hopefully the session was useful for everyone who joined in today. And yeah, I'll probably see you in some other group and in some other session. If you're not on the Discord group yet, the link is in the description of the video. You can join the Discord server. We're gonna talk a lot about different things about programming, coding, and all that stuff. Also, make sure you subscribe and like the video, because that's the only thing I can ask from a live stream from you guys. So yeah, that's it for this video, and see you soon.